unsere Volksmusik und auch die Leute.
Our folk music and our people are characterized by our beautiful landscape, the high mountains and the valleys with the mountain lakes. This is the reason why the Appenzeller is at times so melancholic, and the next minute full of joy. All this is expressed in the music. We can hear it in the change from minor to major keys. Appenzeller music belongs to us. It's part and parcel of our land and our life.
Und ist auch ein Stück von uns.
In 1826, Friedrich Conrad von Kronfels, the chronicler, wrote, "They come to the Alpine festivals full of joy and yodeling. Then the composers appear with the Hackbrett and the violin and sit on a rock, and they all dance and spring around them." The Appenzeller has always been known as a lover of music who revels in singing and dancing. Here an unmistakable music culture has emerged and developed slowly in a very small area. Melodies and sounds that appeal, have a lasting impression, and are passed on continuously from generation to generation. The first recordings from Inner Appenzell date back to the early years of this century. At that time, the well-known Moser Appenzell String Quintet was very successful as an orchestra composed of first and second violin, Hackbrett, cello, and double bass. Such an ensemble is still regarded as the original Appenzeller string music. In the 1930s, the traditional string players, here the Geminder family music from Gonten, had to compete with a strange musical rage. The trendy Grubenmann Orchestra and other jazz and dance bands, which played popular music and Viennese melodies. Nevertheless, they were never able to oust the independent Appenzeller string music. Excerpts from a sentimental film with a regional background made in Inner Appenzell in 1941, the third year of the Second World War. The nostalgic scenes show how closely Appenzeller music is related to everyday life. Even if stereotype ideas and scenes of a perfect world were also well received in the Appenzell in those days. Although people have always enjoyed dancing to the sound of their own music, the authorities did not always approve of such activities. If one's cows became diseased or the cost of living shot up, then such were the penalties for a sinful life. So dancing was prohibited in hard times, up to and even into this century. However, and despite the high fines, such prohibitions did not stop the dance-loving and sociable folk from taking part in such pleasures. The Hierig, an old pantomime dance, is an impressive illustration of how carefully Appenzellers cultivate their musical culture. With a specific melody and a great deal of humor, this dance describes rules for a twosome which still apply today. The teasing and confrontation are followed by the oh-so-wonderful reconciliation, which, as in the past, still moves the hearts and spectators at every Alpstobede or herdsman's dance. The Alpstobede is not only a festive occasion for herdsmen and the descent of the cattle from the alpine pastures. These are festive days during which the social standing of the Appenzeller farmers comes clearly to the fore. Scenes and impressions from bygone days. Nevertheless, like the sounds of folk music, these herdsmen's customs have hardly changed at all. The sound of cowbells and the singing of the farmers are probably as old as alpine farming itself. The chronicler Johann Abel wrote in 1798, "Even when cows from the alpine regions hear this singing, far away from the land of their birth, all the pictures of their former habitat suddenly appear to come alive in their brains and create a form of homesickness. For a moment they wave their tails crooked in the air. Then they start to run, break down all the fences and gates, and are wild and raging. That's why it's forbidden to sing the Kyrian in the region of St. Gallen, where cows, frequently purchased from the canton of Appenzell, pasture in the meadows." The farmer's singing is certainly the most original of all the musical forms that can still be heard in the canton of Appenzell today. This slow yodel without words, known as the Ruck-Userli in Inner Appenzell, has also had a decisive influence on the development of Appenzeller string music. Joseph Dobler merits a special vote of thanks for maintaining the traditional, original Appenzeller string music in Inner Appenzell and for its current revival. He knows the certain zick that's needed on the cello, the first and second violin, the double bass, and the Hackbrett. The Hornsepp also knows how to pass his own enthusiasm and musical gift on to the latest generation of musicians.
So recht anfangen. Zuerst D, dann G, D, G, D, G und C. Ja. Jetzt machen wir den vierten Teil noch einmal. 3, 4.
The body of the Hackbrett must accommodate 125 strings, having a tensile strength of a ton, and has to be as thin-walled as possible. This is the only way to develop its special sound. Hackbrett construction in the workshop of Johann and Johannes Fuchs. A solid, stable, basic knowledge, excellent craftsmanship, and a fine ear characterize the distinguished Hackbrett maker. The master with more than 40 years' experience, he continually improves the instruments and is now passing his entire wealth of knowledge on to his son. The Hackbrett, at the same time, musical and rhythm accompaniment. But it's not until an artist takes the light hammers in hand that the complete inherent strength of this unique instrument is revealed, especially when it's played solo. It's this sound which is associated with Canton Appenzell more than any other. St. Martin's Mass in the Schwende Church. The string music accompanies the choir, playing a composition by Joseph Dobler. It was first performed in 1993 and is a wonderful example of how harmoniously the fine notes of the strings and the Hackbrett can add to the church choir. The chronicles relate very little about the origins of Appenzell village music. Nevertheless, it may be assumed that the players of wind instruments can trace their roots to church music. The Harmonie Appenzell, here in 1873, already played music written for wind instruments as well as for dancing. The once famous Gontenbad Spa House even had its own dance band to entertain nobility shortly after the turn of the century. 14 sturdy musicians in the uniform of alpine hunters. The music societies also endeavor to play the Appenzeller sound more and more. Wind instrument groups play Ruck-Useli, waltzes and polkas, completely in the string music style, and also impromptu. Some of the musicians do not have any or only a slight ability to read music. When the music was improvised, it was played by ear with a great deal of feeling and musicality, following the melody played by the lead trumpet. Impromptu groups are hardly ever static. The formations usually come together anew according to the situation and availability of the musicians. This particular form of making music ad lib without any commitment to strict notes, fixed dates, and concert halls certainly appears to please the crowd who've gathered here. Inner Appenzell, a small canton with fewer than 15,000 inhabitants. Here the passage of time appears to progress at a more leisurely pace than elsewhere. Traditions are preserved, and outside influences are slow to change them. Perhaps that's the reason why the native folk music is still played, sung, and heard so frequently, and with such enjoyment. The Rückuserlian song, impromptu and string music. The interrelationship between melancholic contemplation and an exuberant zest for life. Melodies and rhythms which clearly differ from Switzerland's more widespread Ländler music. The music of the Appenzeller is an essential part of the native folk culture. It certainly can tell us more about the people than mere words.